architect Pallavi Chitnis, who is an environmental architect with an experience of more than 8 years. Her expertise includes climate responsive architecture, green building certification, and energy stimulation studies. She holds a master's degree in environmental architecture and planning. She is BE certified ECBC master trainer, lead AP, IGBC AP, and WELL AP. Pallavi was working with Indian Green Building Council and was in charge for certification activities of IGBC healthcare facilities rating, IGBC health and well-being rating system, and IGBC's Lead India NC, and was involved in facilitation, assessment, and quality control of more than 150 commercial projects. Few projects certified by her includes MOEF's Head Office, Indira Paryavaran Bhavan, Head Office of Navi Mumbai Municipal Corporation, Government of Gujarat, CM's Office, Swarnim Sankul, Infosys Campuses, GAIL, ITC, TCS, and L&T, etc. She was a key team member involved in research and development of IGBC Green Schools Program, IGBC Healthcare Facilities Rating, and IGBC Health and Wellbeing Rating. She has also trained professionals in green building concepts and has thus far conducted more than 50 training programs on green building and energy conservation all over India. Pallavi has also worked with Royal Institute of Arts Sweden on Inclusive India RE Pune with focus on climate-oriented development guidelines. Currently, she is also pursuing her PhD from School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. We welcome you, Pallavi ma'am.
I think Navneet sir has, set a very good background by, giving us an indication of why this particular training program on energy conservation building code is required. Directly jump on to ECBC and what it talks about and how everything is going to work. Let me take you back at a little macro level, and I think all of you will agree to me that a city is an amazing place to stay. It provides you or anyone a lot of growth, opportunity, development, and with all these growth opportunities and development comes urbanization. So people migrate from smaller areas to cities, and which overall increases the population in the cities. A recent forum on sustainable development indicated that around 600 million Indians will reside in urban area by 2030, which means 700 to 900 million square meters of urban space would be required to accommodate so many people in the city. So, with all this opportunity and urbanization, there would be a lot of challenges. And I suppose to an extent, we have started facing these environmental challenges, be it water pollution or climate change or air pollution. And, this is something which we need to cater to. And it is very, very important to create a balance between the two. Because on one hand, the infrastructural development is going to increase, which is going to ultimately degrade the environment. So sustainable development is something which can help in creating a balance between infrastructural development and environmental degradation. And a lot of national international forums have already started working on it since last 10 years. And to name one sustainable development goal is the latest goals that has been defined by United Nations, and it covers a lot of aspects of sustainable development. And energy efficiency or energy conservation is one of the important aspect that has been indicated in SDG goals. Now, if we look at energy scenario of our country, um, building sector or construction sector accounts or comes on number two as far as energy consumers are concerned. So it around 33% of the energy consumption is consumed by building and construction sector. This has been indicated by CEA India. um, if we look at construction scenario of our country, I think we are at a very, very beautiful place right now. Lot of development is going to happen. Lot of new buildings are going to get constructed, which will give us opportunity of developing something sustainable, something which is energy efficient at initial stage. And the and new buildings will give us opportunity to inculcate these concepts at design stage. Another set of building which are existing buildings gives us a lot of opportunity, a lot of retrofitting opportunity, which gives us potential of saving around 30 to 50% of energy or water per se. So, if we look at or if we study the building footprint of our country, currently around 659 million square meters of construction has already happened, and USAID indicated that by 2030, around 1900 million square feet of building footprint is going to get constructed, which highlights the fact that around 66% of the building is yet to get constructed. So this gives us an immense opportunity to look at energy conservation in such a way that the right design of building can help us in reducing the overall energy consumption or energy pattern of the buildings. So with this as a background, Energy Conservation Act was initiated in 2001. And let me take you quickly to the Energy Conservation Act, which was enacted in 2001. So this particular act, so this particular act was enacted, as I told you, in 2001, and the main purpose of this act was to promote energy efficiency in country. And this act provided a legal framework and institutional arrangement to embark the energy efficiency drive of the country. And there were lots of bifurcations indicated in the act. And let me take you quickly with aspects of what Energy Conservation Act talked about. So first and the foremost aspect which Act highlighted was standard and labeling. I think all of you are quite familiar with the logo that has been indicated on the right side. So this logo, which commonly people say 5-star rating, was defined by Bureau of Energy Efficiency as part of standard and leveling program under Energy Conservation Act. And the major aspects that highlighted this particular initiative was evolving minimum energy consumption and performance standard for notified equipment and appliances, prohibit or identify the manufacturer, sale and purchase of equipments that takes lot of energy, that consumes a lot of energy, introduce a mandatory labeling scheme for notified equipment appliances to enable consumers to make right choices. So basically, creating awareness also was one of the aspect of standard and labeling program. And inculcate information on the benefits of energy conservation and energy efficiency to the consumer was an important part of the program. The second important aspect that was covered in Energy Conservation Act was regarding certification of energy managers and accreditation of energy auditing firms. So this particular feature led BEE to establish an entire scheme of auditing and certifying energy guzzlers. And for this, they introduced various exams, and they introduced or they identified BEE certified energy managers and auditors, which were experts in policy analysis, project management, financing, and implementation of energy efficiency projects through certification and accreditation program. So I hope all of you are quite aware with designations where people do mark BEE certified energy auditors or BEE certified energy managers. So these are the experts that are identified by BEE, and this entire scheme was identified because of Energy Conservation Act. The third important aspect that was highlighted in Energy Conservation Act was defining energy conservation building code and norms, which would help stakeholders from building industry to reduce energy conservation, to reduce energy consumption of the building. And the code basically highlights various strategies and various aspects that can overall help in reducing the energy consumption at design and construction phase of the building. There is also a provision of monitoring the building, because if you can't measure it right in a right way, you can't really monitor it. So a monitoring mechanism has also been indicated in the code. And next 5 days we are going to focus on this particular aspect of Energy Conservation Act. So you're going to get a lot of information on this particular aspect. The fourth important criteria or parameter that is indicated by Energy Conservation Act is establishing an energy conservation fund. So this fund is to set up at a central level. This fund is set up so that promotion of energy service companies can be done. Uh, this fund has been set up to increase or to do research and development related activities, which ultimately would help in reducing the energy consumption pattern. And last but not the least, capacity building. So it is very, very important to make people aware about the strategies that they can adopt. So these three are very, very important aspects that has been covered as part of Energy Conservation Fund. And last but not the least, I think a lot of you might have heard about it, Bachat Lamp Yojana. So this particular scheme helps in replacing, the old incandescent lamps to CFL or LED. Now LED lamps have been introduced. So this particular yojana can be availed if any one of you can, go to state designated agency, and they can they can get their lamps replaced there at a very, very nominal price. So these are the major salient features that that are part of Energy Conservation Act. And coming back to Energy Conservation Building Code, so Energy Conservation Building Code, there are three very, very important pillars. One, as I told you, Energy Conservation Act, because it is part of the code is part of the act. Second is Bureau of Energy Efficiency, because they are the one who have developed the entire code, and they are the one who have created the entire pool of policies, and they are the one who direct state designated agency on how to go about it. And last but not the least are state designated agencies. So every state has one SDA who works on energy conservation related policies. So if I talk about MP, in MP we have MP Urja Vikas Nigam, who works on renewable and energy conservation related activities. If you go to Maharashtra, MEDA is there, Maharashtra Energy Development Agency. Similarly, in Chhattisgarh has CREDA. Similarly, Punjab has PEDA. So each and every state has their own named designated agency. And under Section 15 of the Act, state designated agency has given power to coordinate, regulate, and enforce efficient use of energy and its conservation. So the entire code, as I told you earlier, is defined by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, but each state has to adopt the nationalized ECBC code, and they have to indigenize the code, and the entire enforcement mechanism would be under state designated agencies purview. So, as I told you earlier, the main purpose of energy conservation building code is to provide minimum requirements for energy efficient design and construction of building. So here I would like to emphasize on the fact that the code has never given any kind of strategies, or it never indicates that you need to follow particular technology, or you need to buy equipment of particular company. It's a completely manufacturer and technologically neutral code. It just gives you, it just indicates you what needs to be followed. How to achieve is completely up to the designer's purview. So the eligibility of energy conservation building code is quite clear. The code clearly indicates that the commercial building having connected load of 100 kilowatts or above, and the building which is going to get constructed needs to follow the ECBC code. Now, there might be a situation where existing building is going for a retrofitting, or there might be a situation where, say, it's an office building G plus two floor ka building, and then two more floors needs to be added. Some expansion is going to happen. So, in such cases, the new portion, the new floors, or the new expansion that is going to have will have to follow and will have to adhere to ECBC norms. The old part of the building will not have to adhere to the norms. In case the entire building is going to get retrofitted, that means 80% of the building is going to get changed. 80% of the systems are going to change. Then in that case, the new systems that are going to come, even if it is an old building, will have to follow the ECBC norm. So I'll again like to repeat the fact that the code is eligible for commercial buildings having connected load of 100 kilowatt or above, and it needs to be a new construction or a major renovation or retrofitting. So uh, the the broad parameters, or the significance of energy conservation building code is very very clearly indicated. Building code will help in regulating the thermal performance and energy use according to the climate zone. So this is very very important to understand. Climate zone is very important aspect, and that is the whole reason of kind of decentralizing the code based on specific regions. And that's the whole reason why the code has been given to state designated agency to take it ahead, because it is very very important to indigenize the code based on the climatic zones. Second important feature of the code is it encourages use of daylight shading devices, natural ventilation, and solar energy. So basically it inculcate the idea of having passive design. This gives a beautiful opportunity for architects like us to involve our passive design strategies right from our design stage, so that minimum reliance on technology can be done. The third important feature of the code is it focuses on energy performance of building rather than green building. So this needs to be very, very clear that ECBC code only focuses on energy performance, energy conservation part, rather than aspects such as material properties, water use, or building site, which are part of green buildings. So this is something which is very very important to understand. The code only focuses on the aspects that helps in reducing the energy demand, that helps buildings or owners to generate electricity on their own. So this is what has been followed in the code as far as the climate is concerned. So as indicated by National Building Code of our country, the entire country is divided into 5 different climate zones, and the entire code is revolving around these 5 climatic zones. I would request, by end of the session, I would request all of you to download Energy Conservation Building Code. It's freely available on Google. So if you just type ECBC 2017, you will be able to download the code, and then you will get into details of the climate zones of the country. So the code also clearly indicates the scope, because constructing a building involves lots of people, lots of systems. So it was very essential for BE to define what all aspects are included and what all aspects are excluded from the code. So aspects such as, or elements, building systems such as envelope, mechanical systems such as HVAC, hot water heating, interior and exterior lighting, electrical powers, motors, and renewable energy systems are included under the scope of ECBC code. So there are certain exemptions also that have been clearly indicated. So ECBC code indicates that the building that does not use electricity or fossil fuels are exempted from the code. So what do you mean by does not? I think all of you must be aware about a concept which is nowadays coming up. A lot of people are exploring that concept, which is called as net zero buildings. So right now these buildings are not that common, but in future there will be a time where people or buildings would be generating their own electricity, and the building that generates its own electricity is commonly known as net zero buildings. So in future, if any building comes which indicates, or which highlights the fact that we are generating our own electricity and we don't need any electricity from the government, then in that case these buildings would be exempted by the code, under the code. Any equipment and portion of building systems that use energy primary for manufacturing processes are also excluded from the code. And in case there is any conflict to safety, health, and environmental codes, then in that case, the safety, health, and environmental code shall prevail over ECBC code. So fire and safety norms definitely would be prevailing over ECBC code. Now, conceptually, if we try to understand how the code has been defined, the code has been, defined in a very holistic way, and integrated approach has been, followed while designing the entire code. And 4 important aspects: building demand reduction, efficient building system, offset through renewable, which is generation through renewable, building operation and control. These are the 4 pillars of ECBC code, and these 4 pillars together leads to an efficient building design. And that's how the entire code also has been defined. So to get into a little more detail, uh, the code has been divided into 4 broad components. We can also call it as 4 different modules. So the first module focuses on building envelope, which focus over the selection of material of building that is exposed to the environment. And this particular module, if you go and refer the table of content of ECBC code, is indicated in section 4. So section 4 belongs to building envelope. Similarly, comfort systems and control belongs to section 5, and this section ensures the efficient designing and selection of air conditioning equipment, and helps, and as it also highlights the aspects that helps in designing naturally ventilated buildings and spaces. Third section, which is section 6, highlights or covers the aspects of lighting and control. So both exterior and interior lighting systems have been integrated in this particular section, and it limits the demand of lighting load in integration with various sensors and control based on specific requirements of the building and its spaces. Electrical and renewable energy system is the last section, which is section 7, and it focuses on optimum selection of electrical equipment along with limitation over electrical losses, and it also gives a mandate towards use of renewable energy. So, to concise everything on one slide, all the commercial buildings with connected load of 100 kilowatt or more with new construction or major renovations or additions will be the scope of energy conservation building code. Now when we say commercial buildings, um, the code adheres to the definition of commercial buildings as indicated by National Building Code. So the buildings such as hotels, resorts, institutional buildings, colleges, schools, hospitals, uh, outpatient healthcare buildings, shopping malls, open galleries, museums, supermarket, malls, large offices, IT, all types of offices, multiplex, theaters, and even buildings that are used for transport services all comes under purview of Energy Conservation Building Code. Factories are exempted since right now, BE is not focusing on looking at manufacturing processes per se. So the code has very clearly indicated different performance levels. So the code has 3 different years of building performance: ECBC, ECBC plus, and Super ECBC. So ECBC is kind of a minimum level of performance, and it is mandate for all the projects to follow ECBC level of performance. If ECBC performance of level is not achieved, the project cannot go ahead for construction. ECBC plus and Super ECBC has been indicated and has been, included in ECBC code to encourage people to go for even better building designs. So there, during stakeholders, there was a series of stakeholder meeting that Bureau of Energy Efficiency did, and during stakeholders meeting, it was highlighted that fine. On one hand, we focus on ECBC level of performance, but there are certain people who are pro towards energy conservation and who really wants to cross the threshold. So there should be something which help people encouraging there should be something which will encourage people to go for a better performance building, and that was the whole reason of introducing ECBC plus and Super ECBC in the code. And ECBC plus requires 30%, 35% less energy than a typical building, and Super ECBC is like 50% efficient than a typical building. So this is something that I have already explained you. ECBC, ECBC plus and Super ECBC, for all performance levels you need to adhere to section 4, 5, 6 and 7 of code. And there are certain bifurcations already given in these 4 sections as far as ECBC, ECBC plus and Super ECBC buildings are concerned. Now let's look at the compliance approach of the code. So as I told you earlier, there are 4 different aspects included: envelope, HVAC, lighting, electrical power. there are set of mandate requirements, and then there are set of prescriptive compliances. So requirements are one which are compulsory to be followed. If one doesn't follow mandate requirement, you are not going to get ECBC. You're not going to get
Sorry.
ECBC. Hello.
Yeah, it's clear, ma'am. I think it's clear. I request all participants to please be on mute. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. You can continue.
It's okay. It's okay. So, mandate requirements are one which are compulsory to follow. If someone doesn't follow those requirements, ECBC compliance won't be given. If ECBC compliance is not given, you cannot commence your construction process. Similarly, there is a prescriptive set of requirements. So prescriptive set of requirements is like a prescription. It's similar to how we go to a doctor prescribes us medicine. He indicates us how which medicine needs to be followed, how many doses we need to take, what mg of medicine we need to take, and we just need to follow those, right? Similar to it, ECBC also prescribes certain requirements which project just have to follow it. It's very very simple approach that has been adopted. And there is something called as a trade-off option. I think we will cover it in our envelope module, because that is more specific to the module. And then we have whole building performance, which encourages projects to use simulation software to predict, to analyze, and to decide which type of system needs to be adopted. So it's more user friendly. It gives more leverage to weigh what option project needs to choose, and you get more options, you get more flexibility if a project goes for whole building performance. So on day 4 we have one exclusive session on whole building performance, and I think we will go on that aspect in detail during the session. uh, right now I'll just quickly explain you all the three compliance approach. So as I told you earlier, building system components should have specific performance values in prescriptive approach, and very little energy expertise is required, because you just have to follow what has been indicated. So it's little less flexible, but if someone has little energy expertise, they can go for this kind of approach. Trade-off approach, as I told you earlier, we will be focusing on envelope module, but it basically it's something like barter system. So you can trade off between certain elements of building envelope. Whole building performance, as told you earlier, is very very flexible approach, but it needs high expertise, high energy related experience and expertise, and it needs a software for modeling the entire system. So similar to our architectural building modeling, there are certain energy models available, there are certain energy softwares available which gives you opportunity to model the building and to see how the building is going to behave with respect to energy performance. And it's a very very interesting system which we will be getting into details in our next few days. So I think this is something which I have already covered. So yeah, so for whole building simulation approach, or for other requirements also, you will come up with two terminologies which are very very important to understand: proposed building and standard building. So the proposed building is the one which is consistent with the actual design of the building and complies with all the mandate requirements of ECBC. Standard building is one which is um, uh, which has same building floor area, gross wall area, and gross roof area as proposed building, and it complies with mandate requirements that are indicated here, and minimally complies with prescriptive requirements of the indicated section. So, proposed building and standard building are two different scenarios which we need to, perform in whole building simulation method, and we need to kind of compare it. So, a standard building is a minimum ECBC compliant building, and the proposed building should always be better than the standard building. It should be one step, two step, 10 step ahead than standard building. And for benchmarking purposes, for compliance purposes, the energy consumption needs to be predicted using energy simulation software for both proposed building and standard building, and then only compliance can be weighted. So I know it's little complicated, but in next 5 days we are going to talk a lot on these two aspects. So don't worry, this is just your day one, so you will get clarity on these two aspects very soon. So this is a very very unique system that has been adopted by by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and the assessment approach for code has been indicated with respect to energy performance index. So, what is Energy Performance Index? Energy Performance Index is a benchmarking system that has been defined, and it is calculated based on the annual energy consumption of the building divided by total built up area. So, the built up area that has been indicated here has been, if we go by definition, has been adopted by National Building Code, and all the spaces that comes under purview of built up area in National Building Code has been covered in ECBC rules. So I hope all of you are clear with Energy Performance Index. EPI ratio. Now we need to, for checking whether the project is compliant with ECBC code or no, you need to calculate EPI ratio. So EPI ratio is nothing but EPI of your proposed building. Proposed building is your actual design, divided by EPI of the standard building. Standard building is minimum compliant ECBC standard. Okay. So first step, we need to calculate the EPI for your proposed building, and then we need to calculate EPI for standard building. And then once you divide proposed EPI with standard EPI, you will get EPI ratio. And if the project CPI ratio is less than 1, then it is compliant to ECBC. In case it is greater than 1, it is non-compliant. So the project will have to, include certain strategies which help in, reducing the energy consumption pattern for the proposed building. And the project will have to make an effort for making their EPI ratio less than 1. I know it's very, little complicated to start with, and that's the reason I have taken 3 very small, examples, just 3 illustrations, which will help you in, getting a clear idea of what is EPI and EPI ratio. So let us take the first example. Let's go through the first example. Let us say that annual energy consumption of a commercial complex is 10 lakh kilowatt hour. 1 kilowatt hour is equal to 1 unit. So the electricity bill, annual electricity bill for a commercial complex is 10 lakh units, and their built up area is around 10,000 square meters. So what would be the EPI? As I told you earlier in my previous slide, EPI is an annual energy consumption divided by built up area. You need to make sure that the built up area that is taken for the calculation is in square meters. Square feet doesn't work in this formula. So when we divide our total units kilowatt hour by built up area, we get energy performance index. Now, the unit of energy performance index is kilowatt hour per square meter per year. So make sure that total 12 months electricity bill or 12 months, energy consumption is taken into account, and the built up area that has been taken is in square meters. Now, if a building is get building is an owner is constructing a shopping mall, for ECBC compliance, whole building performance method is adopted. Okay, EPI of standard case is 150 and EPI of proposed case is 100. So what would be the EPI? This is our second example. So EPI ratio, as I told you earlier, is your EPI of proposed building divided by EPI of standard building. When we do division, which is 100 divided by 150, our EPI comes out to be 0.66. This means EPI is less than 1. This means the proposed case is energy efficient than standard case. This means our building is compliant to ECBC standard. Now let's do a little bit switching of numbers. If an owner, let's go through the third example. If an owner is constructing a shopping mall, for ECBC compliance, if he is following whole building simulation method, and if EPI of standard case comes out to be 100 and EPI of proposed case comes out to be 150, then in that case, proposed divided by standard EPI would be 1.5 EPI ratio, which means the EPI is greater than 1, which means it is not ECBC compliant building. And it clearly indicates the fact that the owner needs to have a discussion with his team, and needs to adopt certain measures which will help in reducing the energy consumption pattern of the building. So I hope these three examples have clarified your doubts. In case you have any further doubts, please feel free to indicate in the message box. Now, when we talk about compliance, approach, it is very important to understand how to go about it, because sometimes the project team might get a little lost in terms of how to start the entire process. So the entire system can broadly be divided into four aspects. The first aspect is your data collection. So it is important to understand the type of the building, to understand how the building is going to get operated, what is the climate classification, what would be the operational hours. So these kind of data, exhaustive data collection needs to be taken. And I suppose architects do collect the data that I have mentioned here during the design process. Then the second stage is the analysis method. So analysis can be, as I told you earlier, can be manual based method, wherein prescriptive approach would be adopted, or it can be a computerized method where whole building performance approach and simulation tools can be used. The third phase is the outcome analysis. So outcome analysis is nothing but understanding the annual energy consumption patterns, EPIs for both the cases, and relating it, analyzing it with the ECBC requirements. The fourth aspect, or the fourth step, is the compliance check, which focuses on identifying or calculating the EPI ratio for the building, and to check whether the building is compliant or the building is non-compliant to ECBC. These all are the set of reference standards which needs to be referred by people who are working on ECBC code. I think I have missed National Building Code here, so please make a note of it. So last part of the first session is enforcement mechanism. Little complicated, but very, very important to understand, because that is something which would be very, very practical for all of us to follow, and that is something which this is going to help you to make understand how the entire system is going to work. So as far as the energy conservation building code is concerned, the entire roles and responsibilities lie with the central government, state government, and local government. And there are sets of roles and responsibilities with all the three at all the three stages. So central government, Ministry of Power and Ministry of Urban Development has to make sure that Bureau of Energy Efficiency is developing ECBC related, code related technical information, and the updatation of the ECBC code is under the purview of central government. State government's purview lies with Urban Development Department or PWD Department and Department of Energy, which is your SDA, State Designated Agency. And the role of state government is to amend ECBC that is defined by Bureau of Energy Efficiency at central level to meet the state requirements. So in case there is any additions that needs to be made, in case the code needs to get indigenized, then in that case the responsibility lies with the state government, with the state designated agency. And it is responsibility of state designated agency to notify ECBC in the state gazette, and based on ECBC, if there is any revisions required in the building bylaws, that is something which needs to be done by the state government. There is one more very, very important role under state government's purview, especially under state designated agencies' purview, is establishing an ECBC cell. This cell would support the ECBC implementation and would provide the technical support to the entire system. And the cell would comprise of one architect and two engineers, and they would be working in state designated agencies office extensively on ECBC related state ECBC related activities. So if I talk about MP ECBC, Urja Vikas Nigam has already established an ECBC cell, and the cell is working on updating the ECBC related activities. The cell is working on capacity building. The cell is also working on notifying the ECBC in the state gazette. Similar kind of work is happening in different states at their state designated offices. Local government responsibility is very clear. Urban local bodies, be it Nagar Palika or Nagar Nigam, needs to revise the building bylaws. They needs to integrate the approval or compliance process of ECBC with their existing building approval process, and that's how the entire mechanism work. So these all are the key stakeholders in energy conservation building codes. In one or other way, these departments are key, are in, very, very played a very, very important role in adopting ECBC code in their respective states. So, let's quickly go through the notification process of the ECBC. Again, this varies, this would vary, but for understanding purpose, I have taken MP ECBC notification process. I belong to MP ECBC cell. I have worked in the cell for a few months, and that's the reason I have taken this particular example. This might vary a little bit based on different states. So as far as the notification process is concerned, the first and the foremost aspect that we did was a situation analysis. So understanding the existing scenario of the state was identified, identification of total commercial buildings in MP state, identification of energy consumption patterns from the DISCOM, the energy department was, the data was pulled in from the department, and understanding of how many commercial buildings are coming up every year was studied. This was a very, very important stage at the starting. The second important aspect that focused was on document preparation. So an exclusive MP-ECBC code and rule book was made, which integrated which was integrated further to existing mechanism, and a draft document with these two important aspects based on ECBC code 2017 was made, and it was amended as MP ECBC code and MP ECBC rule. Then, a lot of coordination and revisions were made in the code in consultation with the stakeholders, in consultation with the, government departments, which just now I indicated you all. Capacity building also was one of the very, very important aspect which needs to be done. So more than 25 training programs were conducted focusing on MPECBC. And right now the code is under notification process, and I think the similar scenario would be there in other states. So I can say in Maharashtra also similar scenario is there, and parallelly all the state designated agencies are working on the same process. So, talking about key key stakeholders, it is very, very important to understand how the entire system is going to work. So, AHJ is authority.
Yeah, Pallavi ma'am, your voice is not audible. Is it audible? Yeah,
Are you now?
now it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we just lost it for a while, or maybe yeah.
Okay. Okay. No issues. I'll start again. So it is very important to understand who all are involved in the overall, compliance process. So authority having jurisdiction, AHJ is a very, very important stakeholder. AHJ is nothing but your Nagar Nigam or Nagar Palika. Owner and team comprises of the entire design and engineering team along with owner. Now there is a very, very important stakeholder which is empaneled energy auditor. So empaneled energy auditor is the one who is going to audit the entire system. He is the expert which would be certified by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Right now, we do not have any exam for ECBC empaneled energy auditor, but soon BEE is going to float an exam, and all experts like you can apply for the exam and can get certification of empaneled energy auditor, which would give you power to certify the buildings, ECBC compliant building. And DISCOM also plays a very important role. So DISCOM is your electricity department, because since everything is related to energy and the final monitoring is done by electricity department, DISCOM plays a very major role. And then there is an MP or any ECBC implementation committee, which will include experts from various departments such as PWD, such as IPCO, such as state designated agency. And this implementation committee would be taking care of all the queries that project owner would be having. This committee will have around 8 to 10 people working under the system. I think someone's mic is on. I would request you to please switch off the mic.
I have done that, ma'am. It was
It's okay. It's okay. So, yeah, so this is how the entire system will work. So if you see on the left bottom side, step one is would be preparing the documentation. So owner along with his design team would be preparing the drawings, and based on ECBC compliance, and would be sharing the entire set of document to the empaneled energy auditor. The empaneled energy auditor will be reviewing the entire set of documentation, and if everything is in place, would be signing and would be sealing the the documentation and compliance forms would be shared with the owner again. The owner with the signed and sealed compliance form will be going to the authority having jurisdiction, which is your Nagar Nigam, and would be submitting the compliance form to Nagar Nigam. Once the compliance form is submitted there, uh, a UBID number, which nowadays also in conventional process also, if you want to construct a building, first you need to go to the AHJ and get it registered, and you get a unique identification number. So the same thing would be integrated now with ECBC compliance forms as well. So the owner would be giving it to the Nagar Nigam, would be submitting the duly signed compliance form to Nagar Nigam, and um, once the owner Nagar Nigam issues the UBID number, the project can go ahead uh, with the construction. Now, during the construction phase, a lot of site visits and inspection and verification would be happening. It would happen in consultation with an empaneled energy auditor, and during various visits, the empaneled energy auditor will make sure that the specifications that are indicated in the compliance forms are followed in right way, and it would be duty of a building owner to make sure that the changes or the tweaking with the specifications has not been done. So once the empaneled energy auditor does visiting and does see the various specifications, the compliance form at construction phase also would be signed by empaneled energy auditor and would be shared with the building owner. This would allow building owner to this signed and sealed compliance form would allow building owner to go for a permanent electrical connection the in case the compliance is not made, the owner is not going to get the building approval plans, will not get the commencement certificate by Nagar Nigam, and will not get the permanent electrical connection from the TISCOM. So that's the reason it's very, very important for all of us to know how important it is. Now there might be certain questions, I'm sure you must have texted me, which will say that okay, fine, they will do everything in construction, but what about the aspects, the strategies, the energy conservation measures, uh, if they don't follow it in a right way? So that's the reason monitoring has played a very important role in the entire process, and state designated agency would be collating the energy consumption data from DISCOM. The electricity data would be integrated between DISCOM and state designated agency, and EPI would be calculated by SDA, and there and the proper monitoring would be done. In case the EPI is not or in case the EPI goes beyond one, then in that case the STA would be indicating, would be notifying it to MP ECBC implementation committee. And uh, as far as MP is concerned, we are also focusing on having an penalty in place. It completely depends on state designated agency. Few states are keeping certain sets of penalty. MP ECBC also is trying to find out a way of penalizing it, because until and unless penalty has not been indicated, people won't take it seriously. And similar to it, the people who are doing it seriously, who are doing it genuinely, there would be an incentive mechanism also in place, so that people gets encouraged to adopt these kind of measures. So I hope the overall process is clear. I know it's little complicated, but in case you have any doubts, please do let me know. Now I'll be getting little more in detail on the process. So as I told you, the process has been divided into three stages: designing, construction, and post construction. So at designing phase, it is responsibility of owner and team to check for the compliance, to check for the mandate requirements, and it is responsibility of impaneled energy auditor to assist the overall compliance process, to check the documentation process, and to share the duly signed compliance forms. And as far as the AHJ is concerned, Nagar Nigam is concerned, it's responsibility to generate unique building identification number based on the signed compliance form shared by the owner. And it's responsibility to share the UBID number with SDA and DISCOM, so that all of the departments are on the same platform. During construction phase, it is responsibility of owner and team to ensure that the construction is as per the submittals. It's responsibility of empaneled energy auditor to visit and verify whether the documentation that was submitted, the compliance forms that were submitted at design stage, is followed in right way or no. And if everything is going smooth, it's responsibility of the auditor to share the duly signed forms. It is also responsibility of the auditor to notify in case there are any changes in the compliance forms between design and construction phase. And responsibility of MPs, is any ECBC cells, technical grievances redressal committee, to address the ongoing issues raised by the state committee or raised by any owner. Post construction phase involves uh, almost all the stakeholders. So owner and team's responsibility is to make sure that they follow their EPI that they committed in the design phase. They make sure that EPI is less than 1. um, it's responsibility of empaneled energy auditor also to keep a check on the EPI for 1 year. And Discom's responsibility is to give a permanent electrical connection in case everything goes smooth. And as I told you earlier, it is responsibility of technical grievances committee to make sure that all the ongoing issues that are raised by various stakeholders are properly addressed and resolved. So I hope you are clear with these three processes. And at the end, I would like to conclude, by saying that ECBC is an opportunity. Don't get worried about how you're going to follow the process. It's a great opportunity for all of you to adopt, energy conservation related strategies. It will definitely add up to lot of benefit, and it is a situation. It's a win-win situation. There is no need of panicking. It's a win-win situation for owner as well as for the state government or central government, because owner would be getting benefited since the overall energy bills are going to get reduced. At the same time, state also is going to get benefited because overall energy energy requirement of the state or of the country is going to get reduced. So please don't look at it as a challenge. Look at it as an opportunity, a beautiful opportunity, which in which all of us can contribute, so that our country goes ahead towards the sustainable development. So with this, I would like to end my session.